Ow.
Ow. Jeez.
Pain is a logical way to start this conversation, probably. How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
Good. How do you feel about starting this podcast?
A little intimidated. You're an expert at this, and I've never done anything like this before.
I am not an expert. I obviously do podcasting, but I don't know half of what's going on. And you also are an expert with all the webinar stuff that you've done.
I do a lot of webinars. So, yeah, I have some skills to fall back on, I guess.
What part of it makes you nervous?
Nervous that this will not be interesting or entertaining to anybody.
Well, I mean, I think it's worth, like, you talked about me doing podcasting. I have done a side hustle blog and then eventually a podcast for a very long time, for like 17 years. And when I started my blog, for a good 2 years, there were maybe 2 other people that read anything I wrote. And I was kind of cool with that because you were not interested in Seahawks football.
True.
Isaac and our kids in general were not interested in sports, or at least football. So I needed an outlet, and it gave me a community, even like 2 people that I could kind of talk to about the Seahawks. And so, I don't know. I mean, worst case scenario, you and I get to kind of go back over what's been a pretty, I don't know, winding path for us as parents of a disabled child, parents in general. And I think I'm looking forward to kind of hearing your perspective on a lot of things. And beyond just that, if we also can like reach one person who finds this helpful and reassuring and gives them a little bit more reason to start their day feeling a little bit more hopeful.
Yeah, I like that.
I think that it's worth a little.
Yeah, I agree.
Little discomfort.
I agree. I've thought a lot lately that in the early years of being a parent, like we were parenting in the early 2000s, there was not social media in the way there is now, obviously. And there was like the fledgling blog kind of world, but otherwise it was a really isolating journey and not an easy way to connect with other parents, or especially with other parents with kids with disabilities. And I kind of envy the current parents who have access to this sort of, like you said, more reassuring information. So I think that's great.
Well, as typical with me, we've jumped right into just having a conversation. People don't know who we are.
All right, maybe we should start with that.
Why don't you introduce yourself with your name, where you grew up, and why we're doing this? Like, what is this podcast that we're doing?
Okay, sure. I'll start. My name is Rachel Nemhauser, and I am 49 and live in Bellevue, Washington, which is a suburb of Seattle, or a small city next to Seattle, you might say. I grew up in New York State. I spent half my childhood on Long Island and half my childhood or teenagerhood in Buffalo, New York, but have been living in Washington since 1997. So I kind of, at this point, feel like a Washingtonian as much as a New Yorker. I have children, Brian and I have children together that are 23 and almost 20. Our youngest is autistic and has an intellectual disability. I work at a nonprofit that supports people with disabilities and their families, so I'm really passionate about that work and about supporting other people through this experience. And I'm really looking forward to having these conversations, the two of us, to, like you said, revisit the past 23 years, I think. Mm-hmm. And because they've been a good 23 years mm-hmm. and hard. So yeah, I think that's what we're here to do. What about you, Brian? What would you say?
Well, you're also probably hearing our cat Panda in the background. We've put our dog Finn in a kennel to hopefully give us some peace. But yeah, my name is Brian Nimhauser. I was born in Southern California. I grew up in Oregon near Portland. And so Rachel and I grew up on opposite sides of the country. I'm a West Coaster through and through. And I went to school, though, in DC at American University. And that's where Rachel and I met. And ended up coming out to Seattle after school. And as Rachel said, in 1997, meaning we are very old. I think I'm turning 49 in a couple days here. Rachel's the older one of the two of us. She turned 49 last month. And there's a lot of reasons for me that I want to do this podcast. One is I don't know that there's a lot of male voices about what it's like to be a dad of a disabled child and actually cherish it, like to actually have had it been a very enriching part of my life. Mm-hmm. And so I would like people to be able to have that as at least true. A story that's out there.
As a professional in the field, I can say there aren't a lot of dad voices. And I think that's great to emphasize that.
I appreciate that. And the other is I've watched you over the years in like finding your path, like inextricably linked to this, and how many people you have helped each and every day almost for so many years now, people that are really struggling and people that are just searching for something to hang on to and some guidance about some basic things. And society in general, although there's been progress, still tends to, I don't know, overlook or try to ignore the disability world.
Yeah. Or even worse than that when they do think about it, they see it as a tragedy and as a bad thing.
Yeah.
And that to me seems the most current trend. Yeah.
So, I mean, and we'll kind of go over our backgrounds as well and how we got here, but I'm very proud, and that's not even like the right way to frame it, but I gain energy from our life as parents of a disabled young adult, and our journey. Like it's something I cherish, and I just am looking forward to helping other people maybe find a little bit of that, knowing that everybody's journey is different. Every disability is different.
And also that we're not trying to minimize the difficulties, because there have been some really, really hard times and hard days and hard years. So I don't want to ever make people feel like if they just look at this in a more optimistic way, it would be great, because that's not what the message we're wanting to send.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be an interesting line to walk, because I've learned from you and from others, we don't want to overexpose Nate's life, and we don't want to say things that are embarrassing to him, but we also want to be honest about the things as a parent that have been tough, and you kind of have to share a little bit. So that'll be an interesting...
Yeah, it's an important balance. That's true. I'm glad you brought that up, because it is really tempting as a parent to want to just be really open about your parenting experience and forgetting that overlaps really dramatically with the life experience of the person and his right to expect privacy from his parents. So I'm glad you brought that up. That's an important value to me.
Since the disability part is so important, and because there's such a wide array of disabilities out there, and even a wide array of people with autism, why don't you share a little bit about Nate and about what he presents as someone with disability?
Sure. Do you think I should describe him as he is now, or as a small child, or the journey? What do you think would be helpful?
I think just the general idea of what are his disabilities a little bit more specifically.
Okay.
And then we'll save the kind of going all the way back. We'll tell that story as we go through the podcast.
Okay, that sounds good. I mean, I think the thing to know about Nate Well, there's so much to know. I mean, he is such a rich, like, amazing young man with complex likes and dislikes and and attitudes towards I mean, he's like as, multidimensional as anyone else in the world. So it's hard to sum him up. But if we're just talking about his disability, I think it's important to know that he's a person who will likely need round the clock care for the rest of his adult life. And I don't say that with an ounce of shame or disappointment, because that's just what some people need to live their life. But Nate will always need extra support to be safe and to have his personal care needs met, and to be able to really fully access the community, to be able to hold a job, and to be able to engage in the world. So I think that's maybe one way to think about Nate. He is autistic. Like a lot of autistic people, he has some really passionate special interests. In his case, they seem to circle around like horror movies and science fiction-y kinds of movies. He went through a passionate Stranger Things phase, and he's a huge fan of Chucky. But right now his really big passion is Godzilla and King Kong. He's especially fond of Godzilla and Godzilla's girlfriend, Mothra. Mm-hmm. So we talk about that a lot.
A lot. Did you ever expect you'd know as much about Mothra in your lifetime as you do right now?
No. And I mean, we joke about it, but to be honest, it's something I'm really proud of, because his tastes are very different from mine. The things he takes joy from, the things that he cares about and wants to talk about. And we embrace that. And his room is covered in decorations and posters that we've all bought for him to celebrate his interests. And we listen to it and we talk about it with him and we watch the movies with him. And I feel really proud of just helping him blossom into himself. And he's like no one else in our family in a lot of ways. In other ways, he's exactly like everyone in our family. But I don't know. Do you think that was a good description of Nate?
I do. I mean, I think it's important for people to know that, at some point we weren't sure if he was going to be verbal. Like he didn't speak
That's right.
basically at all. Mm-hmm. He now has some words, but most people wouldn't understand Nate if he spoke.
Yeah, I would describe him as like partially verbal. And also I like to add that he started acquiring language like in middle school. Mm-hmm. So a lot of his vocabulary centers around like criticizing the adults in his life and what we say and do. Mm-hmm. So his vocabulary is unique.
Was his first word no?
It has to have been, but his first, I remember him starting to say "shut up" when he was in middle school, yes. And I remember in elementary school I think that's when he started. He told his aide in second grade to shut up, and I think by middle school is when he discovered the finger.
Yes. He uses the wrong finger, thank God.
Yeah, he uses the pointer finger, but he gives you the finger and there's a look in his eye. You know exactly what he's doing.
Yes. So he is partially verbal. His expressive language is a little bit, I'd say, more restricted than his receptive language. I think he understands more than he can say. Mm-hmm. And he has had intellectual disability, from tests, although we've had some questions about how accurate those tests can be given his communication challenges. But physically, he can walk, he can, doesn't necessarily do many active things. We'll talk about that another time, but he doesn't have a lot of clear physical disabilities. Mm-hmm. And so obviously, we've had a lot of people we know that have kids with massive physical disabilities that have a lot of physical toll that they take on their parents. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we have that as much. So I just think it's important to kind of give people some idea of, what we face. He doesn't have any chronic, he has to go to the doctor constantly for a seizure disorder or any of these other things.
Guy.
He's relatively healthy.
Yeah.
And he's a redhead. That's an important
part of the story. Important part of the story.
He's such a redhead.
Nobody else in our family in our immediate family of 4 is. So his like bright carrot top red hair and now carrot top red goatee
Yes.
is really a showstopper.
It is, especially in these summer months. So yeah, I think it's important for people to kind of know about Nate. And then I thought it might be useful for maybe this first episode. Maybe we'll talk about a couple things. One, let's start with your relationship to the idea of being a parent from before you were a parent. Like growing up, what was your picture of what your family would be like? Were you picturing a family? And just kind of like, I think it's important to have a little bit of an idea for people about what we imagined our family would be like and have a little bit of contrast with what it ended up being.
Yeah, wow, that's a good question. My mind just started spinning out as soon as you asked that. I always knew I wanted to have kids, and I don't know how much time I spent like really envisioning what that would look like. I grew up in a single parent family, so the idea that families can look a lot of different ways was not new to me and was actually something I was always really passionate about. Like even as a kid or as a teenager, that my family looking different than other families didn't make us less of a family. And I think that is a value that maybe has helped over the years a little bit. But, you know, I had visions of a lot of fun. I wanted peace. I wanted like a family that got along and a family that laughed a lot together and had fun together and enjoyed and liked each other. I think that's what I envisioned. And I'll also add that I have siblings that I really love and care about, and especially a sister who I'm really close to, and always wanted that for my kids, for whatever future kids I had as well. So I think those are the things in the past, unless you think I'm missing something. That's what I would say.
I don't know this.
You don't know this?
I don't know little Rachel that way. So
yeah, I don't think I spent a lot of time with a really clear picture, but I just always knew that I wanted a family and that I didn't know what it was going to look like.
Yeah, I think it's important that I acknowledge that I was, you know, a middle school kid that would make fun of disabled people. I would laugh at it. There was special ed in our school that was, you know, integrated in, and, you know, they looked different and they behaved in ways that were, to me, very funny. And my friends and I would joke about it. And if you'd asked me at that point, what is the absolute worst possible life situation to end up in, it would have probably been having a disabled kid. And I wouldn't have used the word disabled.
Right.
You know? And so I don't think I was the worst possible. I wasn't like making their lives miserable. They didn't know, but at the same time, I'm not proud of it.
Yeah.
But I do think it's important. I think one of the things we hope to do when we talk is to be authentic and real and not paint some Instagram-y vision of all this. Like, it's been a journey for sure.
Yeah, that's so true. So like when I say I would have been open to family looking a lot of different ways, you're right. That's not one of the ways I would have been open to my family looking at that point when I was younger.
Yeah.
And I'm not proud of that. And but I don't I've thought a lot about that and I've explored it a lot inside myself. I don't blame myself. This was like the 80s when kids with disabilities were largely kept separated from neurotypical kids. So we had such limited exposure that we had no time to get past the like unusual behaviors or the, you know, unique physical appearance to really ever get to know disabled people beyond that. Like, I don't think I was ever given that real opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, humor and comedy in general is a topic maybe we'll talk about another time, but it is challenging. I mean, what makes us laugh as humans often is socially inappropriate behavior that is, you know, it makes you uncomfortable, it makes you laugh a little bit, and a lot of disabled folks happen to exhibit a lot of that. So it's hard for something that in some ways just feels naturally funny to like, you need to be thoughtful about that. But at that point, obviously I wasn't thinking of all those intricacies, but I think the other important point for me growing up was I was an oddball in the sense that I was thinking about having a family. That's our dog, if you can hear Finn in background barking at something. I wanted a family when I was in high school. I didn't want to have it in high school, but I was already thinking about it, and I wanted to be married. And I really cherished the idea of having a family unit where we'd go on family trips and, you know, huddle around the couch and watch movies together. And you
grew up in a really happy family that did that and together. I think you wanted what you had.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. And I was around other relatively happy families, my other friends, and I got something from each of their families as well when I did stuff with them. And so yeah, I was not the person who was like, I want to have a million girlfriends and live my 20s as independently, and someone's going to have to catch me because I don't want to be like, you know, saddled with, you know, a family. I wanted it. And so I just think it's important that I acknowledge that that's a little different than probably 99% of high school aged boys, young men out there.
That's true. That's a good point. When I met you, which was like freshman year of college, so it was right after high school, I remember you telling me one of the next 3 girls I date is going to be who I marry.
I was such an asshole. I was so
into it. I was like, this guy's serious. He knows what he wants.
I was right. You know, that happens more often than you like.
It's so annoying. He's right so often, guys. It's true. Good point.
Yeah. But yeah, so I thought it was important to kind of talk about that because it is pretty different than what I imagined. And then the other thing I think it would be useful to share a little bit about is what are you hoping comes from this? Like who are you hoping that we help? Who are like what in what ways? Give people like we don't know obviously all the episodes that we're gonna do, but give people an idea of like the different types of and can you share just a little bit more about your qualifications besides being a mom? You know, the types of things you've helped people with over the years.
Yeah. Okay. So just like briefly about what I do and what I've done for the last 9 years is that I have been in a position where I work at a nonprofit, and I'm in a position where I'm there to help parents raising kids with disabilities. So I would say over that 9 years, I've at this point maybe helped thousands of families, or at least that's maybe giving myself too much credit, but I've spoken to thousands of people who are raising kids with disabilities, like people from all across King County and in some cases all across Washington State. And our county is a really large county with people from all over, lots of different backgrounds, lots of different languages, immigrants, refugees, people who've lived here their whole lives. So I've had a really deep opportunity to hear from families what their experiences are, what the hard parts are, what the good parts are, what help they need and what they don't need help with. And so I think I bring my own experience plus like this really deep knowledge of others' experiences to this conversation, if that sort of answers your question. And what do I hope this gives or brings to other people? I guess I'll say the early years of being Nate's mom were really hard. And sometimes they still are. So it's not like it's just all easy now. But the early years were really hard. Like it was physically taxing. He needed a lot of care and a lot of attention, and it was exhausting. But more than that, it was scary, and it was anxiety provoking. I had so much worry about whether we could do this and whether our family was strong enough for it, and whether our other son, who we haven't even really talked about here today, but who's 3 years older than Nate, whether Isaac was going to be okay, and if this was going to somehow, destroy his life. It didn't, by the way. We'll talk about that another time. But I just want to talk to those parents who are there, because I know they're out there, and I know they're hurting, and they're feeling scared and lonely and isolated. And I just want to give them hope. Not that, don't worry, he's going to be okay, or don't worry, you're going to be okay, but like, you're going to find joy in this. You're going to find your journey. You're not going to always feel the way you feel right now. And it's going to get better. And there's a lot of reason to feel hope. And I think that's what I hope people maybe take from these conversations.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and there's a reality that the majority, maybe the vast majority of couples that have a disabled kid end up separated, end up divorced.
That's not actually true.
Is that not true anymore?
I mean, I'm not up on the most current data, but when I've did research on this topic a few years ago, what I learned was that that's a myth.
Oh,
and that,
see, I'm learning too. It happens every day, multiple times a day.
It's a myth, and that having a child with a disability doesn't increase your chances of getting divorced unless you have something like 6 kids or more. That was the data that I found.
That seems shocking.
I know. But, I think when you think about...
I think having one normal kid increases the chances of divorce.
No, that's true. Having kids increases that. That's probably true. Yeah. But having a child with a disability specifically... But I will say, I think partly that might be because it's not as damaging to a relationship as you might think. But I also think, like, for some families, having a child with a disability significantly limits their options in terms of, like, the marriage might be going dramatically south, but they don't have the childcare and the finances to be able to divorce. So I wouldn't say it necessarily means that having a child with a disability isn't in some ways challenging on a marriage. Yeah. But in some ways, and in so many ways, I would think in our case, it has really brought us together.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess the reason I brought that up, I don't know what the numbers are, and you're much more the expert here than I am. It is hard for me to believe that it doesn't increase the stress and strain and the likelihood of separation, but that's just based off my experiences. But the reason I was bringing that up is whether you're a single parent or you're a married couple, or you're a parent within a marriage, a single parent listening to this alone, a married parent, but listening to this on your own. I want this to be something that is relevant for everybody that goes through this, because it is very isolating. Almost no matter what, it's isolating having a child with a disability. And while there's, we found, and I think a lot of people find community through their children, like they find other parents. There's early childhood parent groups and other moms and other dads and, picnics at school and all this other stuff, right? We found that with our older child. It's not the same with the disability community for a lot of reasons. We'll talk about that. And so I want this to hopefully reach those folks and help them navigate some of the basic stuff. And as much as we can get Rachel to help us out in some of these things, like when you face an IEP for the first time, what does that even mean? How do you go about it? When you talk to a doctor and you get your diagnosis for the first time, or you don't, what does that mean? How do you go about it? What kind of rights do you have that you might not be aware of? How can you advocate appropriately? Should you have your kid integrated with, I don't know what the right term is nowadays,
in general education versus in a self-contained classroom?
Right. So like there's a lot of these concepts that were new to me and probably new to us. Yeah. And Rachel's got a ton of expertise and helps people every day with these things. And I've had my own point of view as a dad and someone.
That's why I stopped inviting him to the IEP meetings. I don't need his point of view. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, debatable on whether you stopped inviting me or I stopped attending. So let's be honest. We're certainly not perfect parents, but anyway, I'd like some folks to have that. And I know the other thing funny, Rach, is my other podcast is NFL Seahawks related stuff. And we've donated a bunch of money to charity over the years that's helped parents of kids that have autism. And through that football thing, the amount of dads that have reached out to me that have a kid with a disability, and part of what they listen to the sports thing is just to have community and have someone else. So I know that there's people out there like this. And if anyone's wondering, I mean, you and I haven't talked about this, but if this ever became something, this podcast that we're doing, and it ever generated any revenue whatsoever, which is probably doubtful, but if it did, you and I would donate every cent of it and probably match it like as much as we could.
Yeah.
So like we were not doing this to gain notoriety or make any money. We're just hoping that it helps, some people out there.
Yeah, I think that I'm glad you brought that up. That's so true. And yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a decent place for us to wrap on this first episode. I guess I will just say, we're finding our way through this. We're going to try to put out content. We'll figure out what our schedule is for how often we'll do these things. And when we get it out there, if there's things that you want to hear about from us, be great. If you would like to submit a question or an idea, you can either email me at brian@nemhouse.com. That's N as in Nancy, E-M as in Mary, HOUSE.com. So nemhouse.com, brian@nemhouse.com. I think Rachel has a Rachel@nemhouse.com, but I honestly can't remember because it's been so long.
If I do, I have no idea how to check it or what the password.
We'll figure it. I think it's forwarded.
Don't email that. Do yourself a favor.
We'll test that, but next episode we'll see. But at least brian@nemhouse.com. That's Brian with an I. That's the only proper way to spell the name, by the way.
Whoa, throwing down a hot take right at the end.
This is important. So yeah, more to come from us. I'm looking forward to the conversation with you, sweetie.
Me too. This is really fun.
Yeah. All right. Take care, and we will be back with another episode as soon as we can manage it.